been talking for a couple of weeks now about learning to chill, keeping cool when things heat up. It can be hard to keep our cool, but God calls us to show love, be slow to anger, and be kind to others. With His help, we can stay as cool as an Arctic wind, no matter what we face. The Bible is made up of the Old and New Testaments. The Old Testament tells us about things that happened from the beginning of time, leading up to Jesus coming into the world. The New Testament tells us about the life of Jesus, His death and resurrection. The New Testament also tells about what happened after Jesus ascended or went up into heaven, sent His Holy Spirit to the disciples, and about the early days of the church. Many of the books in the New Testament are actually letters that were written to the first Christians to encourage them, to correct them, to explain what it meant to live for Jesus. Paul wrote a lot of these letters. Some he wrote to the churches in different cities. Others he wrote to individual people. Other leaders like John and Peter wrote letters too. Today, we're going to look at parts of a letter written by James. Now, James was a pretty common name back then, and one of the disciples was actually named James, but we think the James who wrote this letter was actually Jesus' own brother, James. So, what did James write about? James wanted to make sure that Christians were living out their faith in Jesus to the fullest. He thought that when people looked at your life, they should be able to tell right away that you followed Jesus. And things can get in the way of us living for Jesus, like our anger. When we let our anger take over, it can lead to an uncontrollable avalanche of emotion. It's especially bad when our tongues get involved. The tongue is a very small part of the body, but it has a lot of control over what happens. Let's see some of the things James wrote about and what he had to say. In class, we're going to read James 1, 19 to 21, and James 3, 3 to 10.